Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show. We are live on YouTube right now on this fine Wednesday evening. And, of course, if you have missed any of our previous shows, they're all on YouTube under the Barroom Network channel and audio-only versions on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, etc., wherever you get your podcasts and media. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. You can comment on the live stream if you like, as well as we go along here. I am at The Real Evan Mac on Twitter, and Ross is at Ross Reed. And how you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Good to see you on Twitter X, right?
On Twitter X, where they will start charging the unverifieds $1. I saw the new ones in a money grab from Elon Musk to keep Twitter afloat. So good times. But Ross is verified. He doesn't have to worry about that. He's a big deal on Twitter. Follow him at Ross Reed, of course. We have a lot to get to on the show today, as we'll be talking about the Bears at length, as Justin Fields' status is doubtful for the game against the Raiders. We'll briefly talk about that Vikings fiasco and impressions so far in this season, how the Bears have done as a team. And then we'll talk about that game at length as far as previewing the Bears-Raiders game this Sunday at Soldier Field, where Ross will be live. And we talk about the rest of the NFL at length as well, and impressions as far as there are no unbeaten teams now. What else to look forward to? Who individually has impressed us? Teams that have impressed us, not impressed us, other headlines like that. And then we might chime in on some baseball. Perhaps we'll finally get Ross's review on the new Drake album, and then Halloween stuff. There's a lot of ways this show can go, baby. So we'll see. Hope you're locked in for this next hour with us, and let's begin, Ross, with, of course, the Chicago Bears as the lead subject with us as usual. And several weeks in, this is about as low as it gets now, with coming off a divisional loss with the Vikings, where it was a close game, and you certainly could have won that game if you are the Bears, even without Justin Fields. It looked like Tyson Bagent, of course, he threw a game-clinching interception late in the game on a drive where they might have been able to go and win the thing. But, Vikings not looking like the really potent offense that they were in the weeks leading up to this game. Certainly it took that hit without Justin Jefferson, but Kirk Cousins looked very normal. Bears defense playing a bit better than other games in the past, right? But regardless, they dropped to 1-5 at this point. So between that and the Panthers being I think 0-6, or maybe they're 1-5 still. They might still not have one. They're 0-6. Oh yeah, still without a win. So that's good news on the draft tip as far as the Bears owning the number 1 and number 2 overall pick at this point. But there's a lot of football left to be played. And this, the Justin Fields thumb issue with him, the dislocated thumb, him being doubtful versus the Raiders. I know x-rays were negative. They were checking his grip, as Aberflus was saying today. He's definitely not playing against the Raiders. Tyson Bagent was trotted out and had to answer questions from the media, and it looks like obviously he'll get the nod to start and a full week of practice to prepare for it. But I think the lead in my eyes, Ross, is what does this do for Justin Fields as a Bears quarterback going forward into the future? A lot of the media was just saying that's it. If he misses significant time, say goodbye to Justin Fields. You reset, you move on, draft whoever wins the Heisman or Caleb Williams first overall, second overall, maybe, or I don't know, you could potentially look at free agency. Regardless, you move on from Justin Fields. And we don't know the severity, all dislocated thumbs are different, I suppose, depending on what you're able to do with them, especially on that throwing hand, though. That's bad for the grip and everything that goes along with it. But if he misses significant time, what do you think about this talk about Justin Fields maybe playing his last snaps as a Bear, Ross?
I think you have to seriously consider at this point. Let's go to the injury. He dislocates his thumb. MRIs. The X-rays are clean. MRI is clean. But still with that kind of injury, there's still, even though the swelling has gone down, there's still a possibility that he's not going to be able to accurately grip that football for a few weeks. And the Bears might still, Eberflus today said that they weren't, they're still thinking about IRing him, which means that he could possibly be out for 4 games. So going back to your initial question, I think Justin's days are numbered, unfortunately, as a Chicago Bears quarterback. And I'm not going to say he's going to be out for the rest of this year, but I have a hard time believing that, let's say hypothetically, he does miss, 2, 3, 4 games. I have a hard time believing that the Bears are going to stay afloat long enough to where this coaching staff comes back next year and this quarterback comes back next year. I think Ryan Poles, and he's on the hot seat as well, but I do think that he gets another shot to pick his own quarterback and pick his own head coach. But, the Bears right now in the pole position to have the first and second overall picks. And I just don't see how they're going to be able to stick by Justin again. And I don't know how a new head coach is going to want to come into this situation and sign up for Justin Fields, knowing that, you don't know if you're going to pick up his 5th-year option. You don't right now. He's not really the kind of guy that you're going to want to give long-term money to. I just think that the Bears are going to take an opportunity to reset this entire thing. And it's unfortunate. And that to me is the most depressing part of all of this, is that, a couple of years ago, we thought that these 2 guys were going to be it. We had a lot of faith in Justin Fields. Bears traded up to get him. We had a lot of faith in Matt Eberflus for taking over for Matt Nagy. And fast forward to today, and both guys are on, you can put blame in a lot of different places, but people are going to put the quarterback and the head coach front and center, and they just have not gotten it done. They haven't won a game at home in over a year. Their record has been abysmal over the last 2 years, and you can't go with that kind of status quo going forward. At this point right now, if the Bears do finish with the first and second overall picks in the draft, or somewhere even close to that, I do think that you see an entire flip of the entire coaching staff and a brand new quarterback coming in here, a la Caleb Williams or Drake May. That's a conversation to be had at a much later point in February and March. But unfortunately for Justin, I think that the Bears are going to move on from him at the end of this year, and they're going to attempt to trade him for whatever they can get out of him. Probably at this point, 2nd or 3rd round pick at best.
It's a big shock to the system, especially with, as we know, as long-suffering Bears fans, that there's just been no consistency at the quarterback position for years. The last consistent quarterback you could say was Jay Cutler. You had a few years with Mitch Trubisky, and then sprinkle in just guys who suited up at the position. And Justin Fields was, hyped up and played at moments last year. He didn't throw the ball, but it certainly looked like athletically he could fit that mold. And you thought he would be taking that next step. And bettors were running to the sports book talking about him being, winning an MVP this year. And I certainly thought that they would be a lot more competitive with Justin Fields in this 3rd year, with the offense retooled with DJ Moore. And this goes back to just a myriad of things of factors that make it pretty clear that Justin Fields will likely have to move on. The line help, him taking those sacks where it's not necessarily offensive line's fault, is a big issue. The play calling, that's not his fault, but it comes back to not seeing that progression that you thought you would see from a guy in his 3rd year that would warrant a long-term contract, despite the adversity, the injuries, everything else that's going his way. You talked about, this regime and Ryan Poles wanted to draft his guy and retool. The first two guys to go when teams are bad like this, I feel like, are certainly the head coach and the quarterback when you look at accountability on these teams. And if you're not getting it done with that guy and as a franchise quarterback, then you got to move on from him and build onto the next guy. And I don't know who that is again. And it pains me to say that they would move on from Justin Fields at this point. I know Cliff pointed out that there might be some quarterback controversy if Tyson Bagent said, and let's not forget how Bagent kind of lit it up in preseason. So I'm curious to see how he plays against the Raiders with this offense as it is. And then if he performs well, then Justin Fields, it does not help his case in the least, right? You figure you'd shove him out the door even faster at this point. But it's shocking to think that, Ross, that obviously, you moved up to get Justin Fields, and in this third year, we're not even halfway through the season, and an injury like this really seems like it seals the deal. That the talks seem to be really there's a lot of truth to them that he would be traded at this point, and Bears would part ways with him.
Yeah, and listen, going to Justin. Listen, I like Justin a lot, and I think he is a super talented young man, and I think that he has potential to still have a very good NFL career. At this point, I just don't think that it's in Chicago. The cards are not being aligned for him. And I know people want to continue to hold on to Justin, and with good reason. The talent is there. There is some kind of magic there. But I ask people, you have to be very rational and look at this situation. What young QB that is not under a long-term contract gets a third head coach in his early career? It just does not happen. It doesn't happen. So you're going to let go of Matt Eberflus at the end of this year. You should let go of him, and Luke Getsy and the entire staff. They need to go away.
Yeah.
But let's say hypothetically you go out there and you call Ben Johnson, right? Number one head coaching candidate for a lot of people, offensive coordinator for the Lions. He's not going to want to hitch his head coaching career to a quarterback that has now seen multiple head coaches fired underneath him. He's going to want to say, Ryan, I want to reset this whole entire thing and have my own brand new quarterback come in here and not have I'm not going to call it flaws. I'm going to call it scars and scabs that Justin has now on him from the constant whatever happened, right? And I put blame on Justin, but I put blame on everybody. This is a collective failure of the entire organization. The entire organization let him down, and he also has his own failures. Just watching the start of that game on Sunday, you have to be a big enough person to admit that he also made mistakes. He didn't check out of plays when he should have. He didn't get rid of the football where he should have. You've got to be able to read the blitz off the side. Like the Vikings and Brian Flores played right into the deficiencies that Justin Fields has showed throughout his entire career. And you have to be able to admit that at this point. So unfortunately, it's over. And that I'm saying that if Justin can't get back on the field within a couple weeks, the Bears are going to continue to bottom out. Tyson Bagent, awesome. Go out there, have some fun on Sunday. This guy is a undrafted rookie free agent from a very small school. The last game of his career, he threw 2 or 3 interceptions. I had the number up. You saw him throw that pass on Sunday. He's got the most noodle of noodle arms you've ever seen in a wind tunnel that is about 1.5 miles away from me in Chicago and Soldier Field. That gets much worse in a couple weeks. This goes my
thumbs up again.
My thumbs up again. So everybody loves the great hope, the great backup quarterback, and they want to see, and they think that it could be there. This is Caleb Haley 2.0 again. At some point, you got to keep going in the draft and going back to the well and to eventually hit on one of these guys. Tyson Bagent might be a pretty reliable backup quarterback, but he is not the future of your franchise. He's just not that guy. He's not that guy. And unfortunately right now, neither is Justin. I wish Justin nothing but the best. He reminds me a lot of Geno Smith right now, where Geno Smith was drafted. Geno Smith wasn't drafted as high as Justin, but he had some pedigree to him. And unfortunately, it took some season with Gino. It took him getting away from some difficult situations and getting punched in the mouth by a teammate. We all remember that, until he eventually found a home when he's a lot older in Seattle. And I do think that Justin can be on that kind of trajectory. Unfortunately, Chicago's not it, man. It's going to be over. And it sucks. That's the crappy part about this, because we see so many, jerseys that were sold and screensavers on phones and the social media, and we really thought we had one. And unfortunately, it's going to be a brand new regime, and that's what happens. There's collateral damage that happens when you get the number 1 pick overall last year because you were terrible. You had 3 wins. There's collateral damage that happens when you have not won a home game in over a year. And there's collateral damage when you start a season 1-5. And unfortunately, that means that the head coach and the quarterback have to go.
Interesting. I did not have you invoking Caleb Heaney's name, on my bingo card for Mac and Reed on this evening, but I love it. Welcome, Tooch. We love you too. Tooch, of course, has the betting show on Barroom Network. And are you done with Justin Fields, or what are your thoughts on it? Feel free to chime in on the comments here on our YouTube stream on the Barroom Network. And people bring up a good point that, that Justin Fields is an NFL talent, and you're resetting, but for every point that Ross made, it makes a lot of sense to reset and build around the next guy. And again, another comment that I posted up here was, who says that Justin Fields even wants to stay here? It could be a mutual parting of ways. He might want a fresh start elsewhere. Certainly.
He might tell you, he might pull look at what Deshaun Watson's doing right now, where Deshaun Watson's been medically cleared, and he's like, I'm not going back out there. I'm not sacrificing myself until I feel good. Justin Fields might go to the Bears and just be like, I'm not even in your long-term plans. I know it. This team stinks. I'm not rushing back on that field with this thumb situation and jeopardizing my career further for a coach that I know is going to get fired in a couple weeks. And I know that you guys are going to trade me to New England or Atlanta or wherever they're going to trade him to eventually. So he might say, listen, I'm my thumb, it don't feel right. I can't grip this football. I'm not rushing to get back on that field anytime soon either.
Yeah, you bring up him choosing not to play potentially with that injury, and he's been beat up in his Bears career too, taking all these sacks and these various minor injuries start to add up. And you see that with these running style quarterbacks. It does it takes its toll, man. But I don't know. I'm kind of siding with Cliff here, and a lot of the commenters in that. I don't know if I can give up on Justin Fields past this season. It's a long way to the end of this season still, 7 weeks in, 6, as they're 1-5 right now. And obviously so much blame. It's terrible just to see, to wonder, if there was some competent coaching offensively, if it would be a little different. But you go back to it, and, these guys, the quarterbacks on the field, are the ones calling the plays as much as the offensive coordinators, right? And they see what you see on the field is different than what these offensive coordinators see up in the box, for example. And so, you should be able to have some recognition, and, you can say there's not so many, run first calls for Justin Fields, or, bootlegs, things like this that would play into his wheelhouse and his strengths. But man, the turnovers are there. The sacks are there. All of the negatives really seem to outweigh the positives at this point, where why would you pay this guy now at this point when you can get a fresh start and you could start to, retain some of these weapons, and then build around one of these really great quarterbacks coming out of college in this next year.
Well, that's the thing, right? So let's kind of play this out, because again, I love Justin. I love him as a young man. I think he's a very smart, very bright young man. I think he's super talented. But let's play this out from a logistical standpoint. Justin Fields now is finishing up he's into his 3rd year. Next year will be his 4th season. Would you pick up his 5th year option right now?
No.
Would you pay him a long-term extension right now?
No, not the way he's played.
No. So if I'm Ben Johnson, Shane Waldron,
you could franchise him.
I mean, you could, but
Why
so
you
if
would?
I'm one of these
Yes,
hotshot
you
head
could.
coaches, one of these offensive guys, do I want to hitch my next 3 to 4 years not knowing what the future is of my quarterback situation because it's so much in limbo, right? And all of a sudden, that's the kind of point that I'm making here with Justin. And we've seen throughout the NFL, one of the most valuable things that you can have is the quarterback on the rookie contract. And you've got that small window to build a winning team, and then it's up to you to maintain consistency after that. And I agree with Cliff. Rebuilds take time, but this is not a rebuild. They have one win this year. They have 4 wins total in the past 2 years. When you haven't won a game at Soldier Field in over a season, this is no longer a rebuild anymore. What are you rebuilding? There's nothing to rebuild. We talked about over the summer, the Bears need to have blue chip talent on their team. Where is it? It's not at the quarterback position right now. DJ Moore is probably it. I would give you that. Darnell Wright could be it long term, but there's nothing else on this team. This team lacks a severe amount of talent, and they still have a giant question mark at quarterback. And that to me doesn't smell rebuild. There's nothing that I can hang my hat on at night and say, okay, they lost, but we got this, or we got this, or we got this. Unfortunately, they don't have it, and that means that you've got to strip it back down again, and you got to start all over. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that could potentially be brand new hotshot head coach Caleb Williams or Drake May. We will talk. We've got a long time to talk about that, and then you can talk about your Marvin Harrison Juniors of the world, or your Ola Afashnu. I don't know how to pronounce his name, left tackle from Penn State. But you've got to start to inject some elite blue chip talent into this organization. And unfortunately, they got to press the reset button again.
We talk about the quarterback ad nauseum, but this is an issue with the rest of the 53-man roster. Like you said, Ross, and as much as it's a quarterback-driven league, you look at the top guys around the league and within the division too, that it's going to take some serious hitting on the draft and then the free agency to try and turn this team around, because we've seen the defense has been an abject failure. It has not has not changed from last season. And like you said, Ross, they haven't won in Soldier Field in so long due to a lack of any sort of competitiveness with this roster as it is, and with the 22 starters that are trotted out there. Joe, a little while ago, asked this, Ross, would you extend Jalen Johnson and Mooney or trade them on the note of these guys? And Ross is shaking his head no.
You trade them now? You trade them now?
Why wouldn't you? And
Exactly.
when it seems like you're going towards number 1 and number 2 overall draft pick, that just stockpile draft picks again and get what you can for these guys. Why would you tie up money in them when Darnell Mooney has just been nowhere to be found? Jalen Johnson has some injuries to him, but you can draft a top tier cornerback. The next guy, it's a young man's position, I feel like, in the upcoming draft. We're looking for agency beyond there.
Completely agree. I mean, I like Darnell Mooney a lot, but he just disappeared in way too many games. You want to give a guy like that $15 to $17 million a year again when you are so far away from winning? Jalen Johnson, he's a good cornerback when he plays, when he stays on the field. He can't stay on the field. I don't know how you can pay a lot of these guys big money when you're still so far away from winning. The Bears would be better served trading them in a couple of weeks for the trade deadline and trying to get as much draft capital as possible. Because that's where the situation is. These guys are veteran players. They've been around for a little bit. By the time the Bears are ready to compete again, Jalen Johnson and Darnell Mooney will be past their prime, unfortunately. So you've got to start getting in talent that is on the same age trajectory as everybody else. I agree with Ralph. Justin is a blue chip talent. Unfortunately, he hasn't played like that. A lot of that's on coaching, but a lot of that's on him too. And I think it's time, unfortunately, for Bears fans. We have to look in the mirror a little bit, and we have to come to grips with the fact that he just wasn't. He's good. He wasn't quite the guy that we thought or hoped that he could or would be. And furthermore, if the Bears get out of this with the top 2 picks in the draft and they still have $90 million in cap space, it becomes the most exhilarating job in the NFL. And I kind of agree with Cliff. I do think a guy like Jim Harbaugh would look at that situation and say, you know what, this might be my grand return to come back to the NFL. And one thing, I know I know Harbaugh is a very polarizing figure, but one thing he's going to do is he will be an adult in the room, and he will bring stability to a situation and a lot of veteran leadership. And another thing is he's going to bring an outstanding staff around him to kind of cultivate the situation. And that's where I will kind of shoot Justin some bail. Is I do think that, again, we keep harping on this. I think everybody failed him. Everybody failed him, from the McCaskies to Ted Phillips to Matt Nagy to Matt Eberflus to Ryan Poles to Kevin Warren to Luke Getsy,
his offensive line,
and Bill Lazor, and all the way on down. I think everybody failed that young man. Very similar to the way David Carr was destroyed and battered as a Houston Texan, and everybody failed him as well. So it sucks. And Cliff, I know what he did the last 2 weeks, but that's a small sample size. I got his stats up right now.
Yeah, against bad teams.
Yeah, it's a small sample size. At some point, we've got to zoom out and we've got to look at his career as a whole. It's just not quite there. And it's okay. It's okay to admit that. I know it's tough for us to admit, but if we don't see him again for 4 to 6 weeks, there's no way he comes back as a starting quarterback for the Bears next year. It's over.
Fun times. We're in sports hell as the Chicago Bears.
It sucks, man. This shit sucks. It wasn't supposed to be this way this year.
It wasn't supposed to be this way. It was supposed to be a bit different. As looking ahead to this Raiders game, it doesn't get any easier after the Raiders matchup. We were talking about a few weeks ago. These are some winnable games, and then you give up that Denver game. You win the Washington game convincingly. Then you get beat pretty soundly by the Vikings, of course, albeit without Justin Fields. You wonder if he came back, if they win that game. And now you get the Raiders at home, and Bears trying, just when you thought they were turning the corner, getting healthy. There's several key guys that are questionable, and Darnell Wright, although I believe he was limited in practice, or at least full to limited. Travis Homer. The running back situation is also pretty terrible too. When you think about how Deontay Foreman just had to shoulder that load, and they had to pull a guy off the practice squad last week when Herbert and Roshan Johnson and Travis Homer, all these guys are injured. So they just can't catch a break. As bad as the offense have played with, you need some guys to step up, and the Bears have not gotten that. But Travis Homer, Darnell Wright, Dan Feeney, Yannick Ngakoue, Eddie Jackson, all questionable for the game Sunday. We know that Justin Fields will be out, even though he's not listed as such on the injury report. They keep saying doubtful. There's just no way he would go, because that thumb would obviously be such a detriment. Looking ahead to the Raiders game, it does still feel kind of winnable. The Raiders have been up and down, but then you think about the defense. If they're not 100% in that secondary, the way Devontae Adams has cut them up in season pass, I think that Jimmy Garoppolo and Devontae Adams connection will be too much. It'll be a big test for Tyson Bagent to go out there in his first NFL start and stare down Max Crosby, who might have 3 sacks on the day. He's going to get after him, you would think. It's going to be a long day for the Bears against the Raiders. Going back to Bagent, we haven't talked. We've talked about how he's not the answer long term, but for a guy, we said the same about a Brock Purdy last year. These guys are in the NFL for a reason. Preseason is preseason, but he still did play well with the guys around him and give him a week of practice. You never know what can happen. And I'm curious to see what'll happen, but it'll be a big struggle for the offense. I think obviously the defense has to step up big time for them to get close to being competitive in this game.
Yeah, my biggest thing with Bagent is, he's a fun football player, and I do think that he makes quick, decisive decisions in the mode of Brock Purdy. But I think people really underestimate Brock Purdy's arm talent and how he can push the football downfield. Bagent has one of the worst arm talents I've ever seen come into this league as a professional quarterback. It is absolutely abysmal. And eventually, you saw it on full display last week. He put everything he had into that throw, and it was an absolute duck. And the problem is, this is the NFL. This is not college. This is not Division III. Eventually, smart defenses and NFL coordinators will continue to adapt to that. And they're going to come up and they're going to creep to the line of scrimmage and they're going to play within a bubble of 15 to 20 yards. They're going to make this kid try and throw the football downfield or hang in the pocket and throw the football downfield. And that's where he's going to make mistakes. And he had 2 turnovers on Sunday. Those are things you can't do as a starting quarterback, right? For all the good that he was doing, even on Sunday, you just cannot turn the football over. And unfortunately, he just doesn't have the arm talent. As a Bears fan and representing all of the Bears fans, I want better out of our quarterback situation. I don't want the try-hard kid anymore from a D3 school that may not have the arm, but he's got moxie, right? I don't even want the quarterback that like Justin who is good, but he's not great. We want elite. We need to start demanding for elite. And unfortunately, we got to keep taking swings at it until we get there, So I do wish Bajan all the luck in the world. I'm not going to go out there and openly root against the Bears or root against him. And I hope to see Justin again on the field this year, because I do think that it would be really sad if he doesn't go out there again this season for the Bears, and that is it for his Bears career. So I'm not going to root for losses. For losses at this point. That's the draft stuff. That's going to fall out where it needs to fall out down the line, right? We've got a long way to go with that. It's still only October right now, so I'll be there in the house on Sunday. And if it's Bajan versus Brian Hoyer, that could potentially be one of the worst NFL quarterback matchups I've ever seen in my life. But I'm just gonna still try and enjoy everything the best I can, unfortunately. And if you see me there, holler at me. We might need to do lots of shots of Fireball this Sunday.
Ross and his Fireball. I got an Alshon Jeffrey jersey that I'll give you for Tyson Bagent. Just tape over it. Put Bagent on there. He'll be a popular guy in the parking lot, Ross. It's brutal, man. And Tooch, just to put a nail on this, just posted this: since hiring Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, the Bears are 4-19 overall, 1-15 in their last 16 games, 0-8 in the division, haven't won a home game in almost 400 days, haven't won back-to-back games. Garbage.
It's rock bottom. This is the worst I've ever seen it. I remember the Wani years. I remember the end of the Dick years. I remember the Dick Duran at the end. We thought Mark Trestman was rock bottom, but this is it. This is by far, to me, the worst stretch that I feel like we've ever had as a Bears fan, at least in my lifetime of being 42 years old.
Yeah, with the potential and for it to get this bad is really an abject failure from the top down, man. There's not really a bright spot you can point to, but we're 7 weeks in, so we shall see. Sure. All goes down at noon on the lakefront, though. Bears hosting the Raiders. We'll see if they can get a win in Justin Fields' absence. Let's move on to the rest of the NFL, Ross, and no more unbeatens. How about it? It was a lot of upsets. There was a lot of close games. It was certainly those teams that were going in as favorites. It was like if you played survivor pools, I think it was just a bad week for folks there picking, the favorites like the Niners, and if you're looking at the Eagles as well. The Browns, though, played well at home, eking out that win against the Niners. And, you could say the same about the Jets, as Robert Saleh was saying. We've beaten the shit out of all these quarterbacks so far, and no one's given us credit, as they soundly beat the Eagles at home, even without Aaron Rodgers and him recovering with his Achilles nicely. But some of the good teams stayed good, of course, with the Lions improving to 5-1, looking like certainly one of the best teams in the NFL. Sure. Bills improving to 4-2. There were some buys, of course, but the Dolphins, another big game for them, beating, albeit the lowly Panthers, but putting up 42 on the Panthers. And the Bengals going to 3-3 at 17-13 against the Seahawks. A lot of people just putting the Bengals, vaulting them at 3-3 right up into the top 10 even. With their slow start, they seem to be doing things right at this point now. But, of those games of the last week, I think, the most eye-opening is certainly the 49ers. Injuries are the only thing that can derail them when they were the favorite team of the NFL going into this. And the Browns, they were treading water until Deshaun Watson gets back, and if they're fully healthy, what can they do? Obviously, losing Nick Chubb was huge for the season, but you re-signed, you re-signed Kareem Hunt, and then you get some help, on the offensive line to try to weather the storm a bit, and they improved to 3-2 against a good Niners team, and it was very competitive. It was a great week of football, and then Jaguars are staying good at this point. What else stood out to you from this last week action, Ross?
Yeah, to me, the top of the list, you hit it on the head. It's the Lions. At this point, we have to start taking the Lions very, very seriously as a Super Bowl contender. They're 5-1 right now. They're 3-0 on the road. I thought that this game on Sunday, going into Tampa Bay, into that heat, I thought Baker was playing pretty well. That could have been an upset situation for the Lions, and they went in there and they just handled business completely. Baker looked like trash. The defense was playing well. Jared Goff throws for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Couldn't be stopped. Yeah,
they have done a great job from top to bottom building out that entire roster. I do think that the head coach for the Bears is running that offense right now in Ben Johnson. And they look awesome. You have to tip their hats to them and how they've done things. It looks fantastic. So I thought they stood out to me. Good rebound for the Dolphins. They went down 14-0 in that game and still won 21 points. That's absolutely wild. And the Panthers are on track to have one of those 1-16 type seasons. They look absolutely abysmal. And I don't know how that situation is getting anybody. It's very good for the Bears. Absolutely. Yeah. Very good for the Bears. And to me, what stood out from last week is some of the losing teams, and you're gonna have to start writing off maybe some of these teams, like the Titans, who are 2-4 now, and Ryan Tannehill's beat up, and they might have to start Malik Willis. That's not a good look for them. That Monday night game, the Chargers, I think Brandon Staley is more than on the hot seat. I think he's going to be gone. Speaking of waste of talent, you're paying Justin Herbert way too much money. He's way too quality of a talent for you to keep losing these football games. And at some point, somebody's going to have to pay for that. And, speaking of Brandon Staley, he started basically as a Bears defensive coach. You might see a Ben Johnson, Brandon Staley partnership as Staley comes into Chicago as a defensive coordinator. I think that's a very real possibility. So that stood out to me. And we go all the way back to last Thursday night. The Chiefs just don't quite look right, in particular on offense. And they are really struggling right now to get anybody the football not named Travis Kelce, so much so that they made a trade today and they brought in McCole Hardman back, from the Jets. They might have to make another move at wide receiver because they just do not look right on offense. There's no reason why the Broncos should have hung around with them, all that time. And those things stuck out to me. It's gonna be a fun week of football. Lions Ravens coming up this Sunday. That's marquee game for me.
For sure. Lions Ravens, the best of that noon slate for sure. And then Sunday nighter is Dolphins Eagles, which should be a great one as well. And then Chargers, looking like they have a must win going into Arrowhead and playing the Chiefs. With the Chiefs, I agree with you. I think that it's crazy to me to just see week after week Pat Mahomes throw to Travis Kelce, and for this connection just to be as good as it is when he's shown that he doesn't really favor anybody else. If you just sort of double team or take Travis Kelce and game plan him out of it, then it seems like you could do a lot to this Chiefs offense. But Pat Mahomes is still playing great football. He's in that MVP conversation for a good reason right now. But yeah, it's another good week, and certainly those top teams. I feel like you just can't ignore the Lions, and it makes you jealous as a Bears fan. And looking at what they're able to do week in, week out as a complete football team, playing well defensively, traveling well, like you said, 3-0 on the road is super impressive. When that defense for Tampa has been no slouch, but Jared Goff was just able to cut through him. It didn't matter who he was throwing to. He was able to get first down after first down, just burn clock and have some big plays and a big game overall. And he's in that MVP conversation too. When you talk about guys who are in that position at this point in the season, when we're almost halfway through it at this point. But yeah, in this next week, it's going to be another fun one. I mean, with the who was I talking about here? With the Chiefs, just circling back to them, I'm curious, obviously you have that sort of bullseye on your back as the
Super Bowl
former
champs,
Super
yeah.
Bowl champ at this
Yeah.
point, and repeating is the hardest thing to do. And they also just they haven't played, obviously playing great talent in Detroit. I'm curious to see, they have a tougher schedule going ahead in the next several weeks, if they can come out of it and keep this really good pristine record.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's their defense is good. Their defense is good. They've got to get it going on offense. Again, they're just lacking talent on the perimeter. But they got some guys. They got some young guys. Rice is a young guy. He's going to start to come on there. But luckily for them, they are in a tough competitive division. But those teams in the division are kind of coming down a little bit. So I think the Chiefs are going to be okay. They're going to kind of coast until the playoffs start. I think that the AFC East kind of beating each other up helps them out a lot. With the Bills and the Dolphins, you figure that those teams are going to be pretty close together from a record standpoint. Same thing with the AFC North when you factor in the Browns, Bengals, Steelers, Ravens. And so, I think that all that benefits the Chiefs as they try and figure this out and get it right. Speaking of Steelers, that's this Sunday now. I don't know how they continue to win football games. Kenny Pickett looks like shit for like 55 minutes, and then like the last 5 minutes of the game, he pulls like two throws out of his ass, and you're like, whoa! Why? And they win football games. Now they've got a huge game against like two teams. They go to LA this week against the Rams. The Rams are 3-3, and I think everybody thought too the Rams were going to be bad this year, and they're hanging in there right now. That's a big football game on Sunday. 3-2 Steelers versus 3-3 Rams.
Yeah, the Steelers again, kind of without a running game to speak of. I feel like with Najee Harris, he has under 300 yards. If you had told me that, I would have thought you were crazy into the season here with Jaylen Warren.
I was going to say my fantasy team says make the move to Jaylen Warren. I've been stashing him specifically.
I got him stashed too.
Go make the move.
I'm with that. Yeah, Ross, anybody individually stood out to you? You got any rookie watch candidates that you've liked? I know a couple guys that are getting the start. Of course, Tyson Bagent, but he's not in that same class as Stroud. It's a bummer with these injuries that are starting to pile up too. We lose Anthony Richardson for the year. Just like the concussion and then the shoulder. He's got a crazy welcome to the NFL first few weeks here.
And that's unfortunate. Yep, that's unfortunate for that young man because he was very talented. But that's part of the risk that you run, where everybody kind of says, "Well, cultivate the offense to the quarterback and play to his strengths and stuff like that." Anthony Richardson is like 6'5", 250, 260 pounds, and he didn't finish 3 out of his first 5 starts in the NFL. Now he's out for the rest of the year in his rookie season. Be careful what you wish for when you want these young guys to just start running and doing these all kind of things. They hit hard in the NFL. They hit very, very hard. And we've seen that happen before with guys like RG3. Some of these guys are not able to hold up long term. So I do think that the Colts are playing the smart, play the long-term game, take him out for the rest of the year. Hopefully that puts you in a better position to get a better draft pick and put some more talent around him. But Shane Steichen is going to have to look at that offense in the offseason and say, okay, what do I need to do to keep this young man healthy but still allow him to succeed? And of course, from a rookie standpoint, Stroud is playing outstanding. He looks like he's been a 7-year veteran in the NFL. That really helps that he's running that San Francisco offense. Bobby Slowick, of course, he's got Laramie Tunsil, one of the best offensive linemen in the game right now. Guys like Nico Collins and Tank Dell have been playing outstanding as well for him. CJ Stroud's awesome, and it's still Puka mania, even though Cooper Kupp has came back.
Sure,
Puka is still one of the best rookies this year. He's been absolutely outstanding. Great find for him. From on defensive side, I know Jalen Carter didn't play last week. They missed him out there, but he's been an outstanding rookie as well on the defense for the Eagles.
Houston, very surprising, right? With what they've been able to get right, and CJ Stroud. So it certainly starts with CJ Stroud, and then they're stringing together some wins at this point where they're in the thick of the division. They're 3-3. Jacksonville, certainly the favorite, but Indy and Houston kind of nipping at their heels. Tight division races. You talked about the AFC North and how tough That is with the Bengals. They're at the bottom of the division by record right now, but it could be any of these teams. If you asked me today how it would finish out, they've all flashed moments of greatness between the Ravens, the Steelers, the Browns, and the Bengals at this point. So, the South is pretty tight too, outside of the Panthers as well. But a lot of football, a lot of good football coming this Sunday. We shall see how it goes. And Ross. It is. We've avoided it for months. I feel like, not on purpose, besides the Cubs and the Sox. But we were talking in the pre-show. You were looking for some playoff baseball at this point, and playoffs. You found it. That's exciting. You got the Astros and Rangers tonight, and that's a fun Texas matchup when you talk about an ALCS, and then with the Phillies and Diamondbacks, that series is rolling on tomorrow, as will Astros Rangers. So, what are your impressions of this postseason so far? We've talked a lot about it. I love the Phillies run, from my East Coast family standpoint, and the trash talk, going back to that last series for the Phillies, and the way Bryce Harper has stepped up in big moments. It's fun to watch. The Astros, you can trash them for, the whole cheating schedule and everything, the scandal and everything, but they've certainly made people forget about that, the way they've played in the past few years. And then the Rangers, a really hot team right now too. That should be a fun series. So yeah, what are your impressions?
I mean, there's a little bit of parity here because the Dodgers were one of the best teams in baseball, and they're gone. The Braves are one of the best teams in baseball, and they're gone too, right? The Orioles won their division, and they didn't even win a game in the playoffs. So that part of it's fun because it's exciting. There's a lot of parity involved. But you look at the teams that are left over. I mean, I'm all in for a Rangers versus Phillies World Series. I'm a huge Bryce Harper fan, huge fan. He's my favorite player to watch in baseball. He really elevates his game to the moment. He is not scared to go out there and take the big swings and get the big hits. And I think his whole team feeds off of that. Kyle Schwarber is another guy, as we know from Chicago days. He has put together some big swings in the postseason. He had another big home run yesterday. Trey Turner was a guy that was slumping really bad, and ever since the fans kind of picked him up, he's been absolutely awesome. The Phillies just they went for it. They spent some money on some guys, and they said, "Look, ball go far, team go far," and they're on the precipice of going to the World Series. And then for the Rangers, again, it's the same thing. It's you've got to spend money on top level elite talent. And they went out there and they got Corey Seager and they got Marcus Semien. And people are like, you're spending too much money on those guys and this and that. They go out there, they trade for Max Scherzer at the trade deadline, another big ticket guy. But look what they're doing right now. They've got the Houston Astros, the defending champs, on the ropes right now. The Astros look like they just got punched in the mouth and don't know what the hell to do as this game's about to start in front of me right now in Houston. And it's exciting. And I think it'll be exciting to see a little bit of it's always exciting to see something different. But I'm all in on a Rangers versus Phillies World Series. I think that'll be a lot of fun. I don't think the Rangers ever even won a World Series before. I can't remember them winning one before.
I can't remember them winning one, and they're doing it in pretty crazy fashion too. This the Evan Carter story is really fun too. Him being 21 years old, and now D-backs going to start their rookie in Game 3 of the NLCS. So it's I'm with you. I think it looks like it could certainly be a Phillies Rangers World Series at this point, and the only thing missing from this is Joe Buck at this stage in the in baseball. And as much as you would hate on Joe Buck, I think he was certainly a great commentator on baseball, and he has to miss it as much as he's great on Monday Night Football with Troy Aikman. It's tough to not hear him call these games.
I know. This is when there needs to be in sports broadcasting, like you need to be able to like loan guys out, right? Like how soccer players can just be on a loan for another team for a couple weeks or a season or something like that. Yeah. ESPN has to be able to say, all right, Fox, we're going to loan you Joe Buck for $9.8 million for the 3 weeks that you need him, because that is the one thing that's missing from this and I like the announcing team that they have out there. The pregame show is terrible with A-Rod and Jeter and Ortiz. That's absolutely awful. But Joe Buck, I don't understand how people can hate on him. That guy has the ability to let the big moments breathe and not be too overzealous. And he is just has a great feel for whatever game he's calling. But in particular, baseball, I know he got that from his father. His father was one of the greats at it. And I do miss Joe Buck calling these baseball games. I can't believe that we're going to have another World Series without him on the mic. That sucks. It's
a bummer, man. You into the spooky season here? How's the Reed household looking? Everybody,
of course, yeah. The decorations are downstairs. I try and watch a couple scary. I would try and watch scary movies as much as possible. The year actually next to me right here, I've got the new Jordan Peele book out there, Screaming. This is an anthology of different horror stories. So.
Good coffee table book.
Looking into that, yeah, absolutely. We're looking at that. I love Halloween this year. I am going to the movies this weekend, but it's not to see anything scary. It is to spend 3.5 hours to go watch Killers of the Flower Moon, which is the brand new Martin Scorsese film. As we all know, I'm a huge Martin Scorsese fan. How can you not be? And I also don't mind 3.5 hour movies. I embrace them. So I cannot wait.
Ross is pro not cutting anything out of these
100%.
But it's a good director. If it's Avatar, that's one thing. But if it's a good director and
it's Scorsese, this might be his last movie. Like he's like 80 something years old. You don't know how many more movies Martin Scorsese can make. And so I'm going to and it's DiCaprio, it's De Niro. You don't know how long you're gonna see those two guys make movies together.
Read the book too, people. Like
I read, yes. The book is
insane story. I'm sure that Scorsese will do it justice, but it's a crazy story. And spoiler alert, it's more bad looks for the white man.
Right. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Don't look any better. And speaking of white men, welcome John Buffone to the that's a good segue, right, John?
Wow, what a transition. And just
he's on right after us. Of course, Buffone 55 at JD Buffone. How you doing, John?
I'm doing well, fellas. Looking forward to the weekend. I'll be in Chicago, so I'm looking forward to
everybody and their mom coming out. We got a lot of barflies coming out too. Are you going to the game as well, John?
I am going to the game. Yeah, we're driving out Friday, visiting with some family, catching up with some barflies on Saturday, and then hitting up Soldier Field on Sunday. My brother and I are going out. He's never been to Chicago, so it's going to be a good time. We bought these tickets knowing that Tyson Bagent was going to be the starting quarterback, and I'm glad that we got the tickets when we did, because I'm sure that the value has just skyrocketed since then.
Right, exactly.
Savvy investment, John.
Yes. Buy low.
Yes. Well, John, come find me on Sunday. We'll have a much deserved beer as we cry into this, watching the Hoyer versus Bagent Bowl.
It's what everyone's been looking for. I can't believe it's not the game of the week. How did they not flex this? Like it's incredible.
Listen, given the last couple Sunday night games, they could have just flexed this one into there and we wouldn't have even noticed.
Wouldn't make a difference. You're right.
John, I know you're going to be Bears heavy on Buffone 55 tonight. And just a little sneak peek, our hot topic certainly was the situation with Justin Fields at this point, with him being doubtful for the game and his future as a Bears quarterback in doubt. Are you leaning any particular way in the Justin Fields saga, if you think he'll remain a Bear into the future or not?
Well, we'll be talking about this a lot on the show, but essentially what this does is it's not good for Justin Fields. It's not good for the Bears, because this was ultimately supposed to be kind of a make it or break it year for Justin Fields. And if his resume gets cut short this year, depending on how long he is out, then he isn't able to put his full resume out on tape. The Bears aren't able to get a full year of looking over his tape to see if they want to, continue down this route. So really, I mean, as much as, some people are like excited about, Bagent going in or whatever, it's really unfortunate that we're not going to get that full, season to see what you have there. And then the Bears are just going to have to make a decision. And we know how good the Bears are at making these personnel decisions. And so with even less data, they get to go and make a really important decision like this. So it's really unfortunate. I hope that he's not out that long. But you know what? The season it's not exactly going to cost them the playoffs, but you're hoping that you've been able to see a little bit more of him.
Well, regardless of the Bears record too, and where this team is headed. You just want to see Justin as a player be healthy too.
Sure.
And for him to realize his full potential, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether it's in Chicago or not, you want him to be able. I mean, it's not like he hasn't been a jerk throughout his tenure here. He hasn't, rubbed people the wrong way really, as far as his character goes. His play has been very divisive and very polarizing, but him as a person, just much like Mitch Trubisky, although his play wasn't as polarizing, but there was never a bad word said about Mitch Trubisky's character per se. And I think for the most part, Bears fans kind of wished him the best on the way out. And with Justin Fields, depending on how this thing shakes out towards the end, I think a lot of Bears fans will be wishing him the best if he's not in Chicago. He's just see one of those guys that is easy to root for, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's where we all have to kind of come to grips with at this moment is, regardless of the situation, it's a failure organizationally. It's a failure, from top to bottom, from GM to head coach to quarterback. And this season could potentially be an incomplete season for Justin Fields, but incomplete also means, ultimately the book is probably going to get closed. If for whatever reason they can't, evaluate him fully this year and they end up with the first 2 picks, that's it. They're going to pivot to, you cannot pass up on a Caleb Williams or Drake May on a rookie contract. To potentially keep Justin for another year or 5th-year option. That doesn't work that way. He will be shipped out, unfortunately, and that's the crappy part of this. Is we didn't want it to end this way. Obviously, we wanted to see him go down playing 17 games and get a full viewing experience of how he does. So I think that's the most depressing part of all this is in October, we are all having these conversations about this might be the end of the Justin Fields era, where at least we were hoping to not have these conversations until December, January.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate because there's a real possibility that a new head coach is in town next year, and you would like to be able to put some real. If you're a Justin Fields guy, if you're Justin Fields and you want to stay in Chicago, you're hoping that you have a full year for that coach to look over some game film and say, you know what, I can turn this guy into something, as opposed to not even, halfway through the season. And so that new coach, that new regime may come in and say, you know what, we want to start with our own rookie quarterback. Sure. We want to restart we want to start the quarterback contract time cycle over again, so we don't have to pay the guy for the next 4 years. And we want to do it our way. And quite frankly, the Bears aren't very good at that, in bringing in a GM and a head coach and a quarterback all in the same year. They always seem to stagger a little bit. Mitch was not Nagy's guy, and Fields was not Eberflus or Getsy's guy, and they always seem to kind of stagger that. So maybe if a new coach comes in, he just doesn't have as much data to go off of to make that decision, and may just opt to start all over with a rookie.
Right, I completely agree.
John, what else you got coming on at 7:30?
We're going to go over a lot. We're going to go over, obviously we're going to talk about Justin Fields, but we're also going to talk about the season holistically and how many games realistically we can see the Bears winning for the rest of the season. And spoiler alert, it's not too many. We're going to go through the rest of the season and see where the Bears could shake out in the win column. Maybe pick up a win here or there. And that all important game against Carolina, where the Bears really can't lose, because no matter what happens, they have the Panthers pick. And so there's something good that can come out of it. Now, if they beat the Panthers, they could potentially keep them winless, and they could keep that. They can keep that number 1 pick. But we'll kind of be. There's only so many things you can talk about whenever you see this Bears team, and so we're going to try to attack it from all angles and see what we come up with.
All right, right on. Well, John, thanks for jumping on the show. My screen went black that whole time. That freaked me out. Sure. And on the technical aspect of things. But yeah, coming up next, it's Buffon 55 at 7:30 Central Time. And enjoy your time in Chicago, John. We hung out a little bit at the last barroom get together. But I know you and Ross will probably crush some Fireball and beers together.
Sounds like a good time. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely.
All right, John.
Good job.
There he is. Stay tuned for Buffon 55 again at 7:30 Central Time right here on the Barroom Network. That's it for us. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. Follow me at the Real Evan Mack on the social medias. Thanks to all the barflies chiming in throughout the show on YouTube, of course. If you've missed any of this show, it will be on the Barroom Network channel very soon. And then the audio only versions are on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts and media. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. Ross, appreciate you, man. Everybody, good to each other out there. Have fun Sunday. For now, we say deuces. So long, everybody.
Peace.
Thank you.